Welcome everyone. I'm calling the meeting to order. So first and foremost, welcome everyone. We now have the Equity Board in person and some online. So thank you all for joining us today. We will also be working with our Spanish interpreters. So I just want to give everybody a few quick reminders on how we do our meetings. We want to make sure that we speak clearly and pause frequently, something I'm also working on. Be sure to state your name before you speak. And then mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And that'll just help with all the technical stuff. If you have any technical issues, please reach out to us in chat or feel free to call in. There's also some troubleshooting information that you can find on our website. And I will defer to Monica for our roll call, and she will also be keeping time for us tonight.
Thank you so much, Shay. Good evening, board members. To begin with roll call, I just want to make a quick note that we have three board members online tonight. Lucrecia Choto, Cristina Bonce, and Helen Benj are online, and the other board members are present. I'm happy to actually go to names if that's helpful for everyone. Okay, so we have first Elisa Stewart, and I don't see her quite here, so perhaps she's running late. We can check back in a little bit later. Megan, as you know, her last meeting was last time she went off to college, so we are going to work with clerks on taking her off the roster. Helen, I'm going to unmute you for you to be able to respond. Give me just a moment. Helen, do you mind saying that you're present?
I am present.
Yeah. Thank you. Welcome. Okay, board members, I appreciate your flexibility as I go with multiple screens here. Next, I have Lorna Gilmore.
Here.
Thank you, Lorna. Welcome. Lucrecia Choto, she's on the phone. Lucrecia, I'm gonna unmute you here for attendance. Did you lose Lucrecia? Yes, I think she fell off. I'm sorry we lost Lucrecia. Hopefully she can call back. Next, we have Ray.
Here.
Nice to see you, Ray. And Shay.
Hi.
Tony.
Hello.
Christina is online. Christina, I'm gonna unmute you.
Hola.
Hola, Christina. Good evening, welcome. And Kelly.
Here.
Good evening, welcome. Preeti.
Here.
And I think that concludes our roll call. Jacob, also our youth member, he also went to college, so. So exciting.
All these kids going to college.
Exactly.
All right. So given that this meeting is a little bit different, I just want to remind everyone too, for the people that are in the room, if you just want to raise your hand if you want to speak, I will do my best to make sure that I'm paying attention and I recognize you. However, I may not get you all in order. On the other side of that coin, for the folks that are online, please just raise your virtual hand and I will call on you based on who all I see on the virtual hands. Does that make sense for everyone? All righty. So we're going to jump right in and approve the minutes from our last meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review? All right, wonderful. So I will go ahead and ask for a motion. Do we need to still do the motion that's the other motion where we just said if there are no changes or requests to change the previous minutes, then we'll go ahead and approve. Can I get a second?
A second.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, ma'am.
All right. And we'll jump right into our first agenda item just to be respectful of our chief's time. So Chief Paula Schwan, am I saying that correctly? Will be talking with us tonight. So whenever you're ready, we're ready to listen.
And I apologize. Yes, it's not on the agenda, and it's my mistake. If Chief is okay, we had Council Member Michelle join us for a few minutes. and she would like to make some welcoming remarks to the board, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
No,
Sorry
that's
about
fine.
that.
This is great.
We jumped over the public comment section, so.
Chief Schwan and I were in a hybrid meeting just earlier today, so we know all about the technical glitches that go on with hybrid meetings. So every single board and commission, a city council member is going to go out and welcome you, because we want to welcome you back to in-person meetings, celebrate the fact that we are all back in person again, and just thank you so much for your service to the city of Issaquah. Last night, I think you probably have this on the agenda, the city council did adopt the new equity calendar unanimously by consent. And so I'm so excited, and actually I'm already sharing it with other elected officials on the east side who are excited to see it too. So the work that you do is so fantastic. It's just hard work. As you know, I'm looking at Kelly because we know. So anyway, thank you so much for the time that you give to us, and welcome back to in-person meetings. And let's keep our fingers crossed that these in-person meetings continue, because I know that COVID's still going on, unfortunately. So we'll just hope that it stays very low. I guess we're now down in the low COVID status, and we'll hope that that remains. So anyway, I just wanted to drop in. I need to actually run to another meeting. So have a great meeting, and I look forward to all of the future good things that we're going to do together.
Thank you for stopping by. And
No,
apologies for the oversight.
It's perfectly fine, absolutely fine. All right, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Alrighty, so thank you so much for that, and we're gonna try this again. Alright, so Police Chief Swan is going to speak with us. Swan, am I saying that right? Swan is speaking with us tonight, so whenever you're ready, please begin.
Thank you. Are you president?
Or I'm actually, I like to just consider myself a member, but I'm the chair.
All right, well, thank you, Chair Fleming. As she's mentioned, I'm the new chief of police for the city of Issaquah. I've been with Issaquah for 5 years now, and I've been the chief for about 2 months. Was the interim chief prior to that for about 7 months. So over the last year, first of all, I'd like to talk about kind of what we do. Obviously, we're in law enforcement, but we are more than that. We have a lot of different roles in the community. As she mentioned, we were working with Kiwanis earlier today. We do community outreach. We try and keep the community safe, not just within enforcement actions, but also about education, and even part of the engineering piece in making sure that the community is safe and forethought versus it being reactionary. And so in November last year, we were down 27 of our staff, and which is almost 40%, which is huge. And so by the end of this month, we will only have 5 vacancies. So we've been extremely busy, and we have a lot of diversity in our hires, and I'm very excited about that opportunity. And so it wasn't because of anything other than they were qualified applicants. And so that's what it basically boiled down to. And we're just excited to have such a diverse group also that's been reaching out and applying for the positions of police, not just police, but corrections, dispatch, all of the above. And so we're excited about that. We had 9 people that were introduced to council last night during the meeting. And so I've started taking them to council so you can see and meet those people if you're able to go to the council meetings as well and see some of those individuals. And we're trying to bring out all our new hires before council. So there is that opportunity. And only one of them was an officer. We have 3 more starting on the 16th. We have 2 more starting by the end of the month. So yeah, it's been a very busy process, and we're excited about all the staff and getting back there. You won't see those numbers on the street for a little while because it takes a long time to get those through the training process, which is the academy and field training, if they're not laterals, could take up to a year from a hire to get them on the street. So we're building, we're getting better to where we have more than minimums on that patrol, which is amazing. So that's another big part of it that the community will be able to see. So then we can get people in the community resource positions so they're able to come to more meetings and work with a lot more of the committees and be able to be available to even come to these meetings regularly. Hopefully is our plan and our hope. I would say highlights for us is, well, so in records, we got approved, we're gonna have one overhire, or not, one more hire added to our staff. We have a crime analyst that we haven't had before. So we will be able to use that crime analyst to Ryan Smith. She's amazing. And stole her from San Diego. She's an Issaquah grad, so she's come home, which is very nice. We're excited about. And she will be able to put information together that will assist in the community, assist for your board to get information. So if you guys have questions or say, in certain, crimes or certain areas, which crimes are occurring, were vehicles locked versus not locked? Were they, what was the race of whoever's been incarcerated? I mean, she has access, and we're hoping to do a weekly blotter like we used to back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And that's our goal, to put stuff out either on social media or with the Squad Daily. And so I'm working to improve that as well. So that's a big highlight. I'm doing upcoming in next week, and I don't know when they're going to post it, but the mayor's going to interview me, or I'm interviewing her, or we're kind of interview back and forth, and we're going to post that online. So we're also going to do a virtual town hall for people to ask questions that we want to be able to have have the law enforcement accessible for just regular questions in the community. So that's our goal as well. Challenges that we have, I think the biggest challenges that we have are twofold, other than hiring in this climate. I think both the challenges are making sure that we get out more in the community, perception, and education. So the perception is we've never had a problem in this community of defunding. Everybody's always talked about, oh, we don't want to defund our police, we shouldn't be defunding the police. That's never been something in the 5 years that I've been here and through this whole, all the climate that's gone on in the last couple of years. That's never been a thing that we felt from the city council or the administration. And so that's something that needs to be known, because people come in, everybody said, I don't think we should be defunded. That's never been something in Issaquah that we felt as far as the police department. It was not specifically, any cuts that were made were citywide in all divisions. It was never for defunding the police. So I just want that to be clear and known. I think the other perception is that we can come and solve a crime in an hour. That doesn't work. It's not like TV. And so that's a problem. And so educating on some of those steps. Everybody will ask, or not everybody, it's often asked, well, can't you just fingerprint this, this certain surface in a car? That's not an option. You can't do it on all surfaces. On TV, they show that you can, but it just doesn't work that way. And there's one actual fingerprint lab in the entire country. So if we fingerprint for a property crime, they're already inundated with the personal crimes. So there's certain things and parameters, not that we're not willing to do it, it's just the reality of what can happen. And we also respond to everything. Other communities do not have that. I've talked to other law enforcement agencies, and everything's either online reporting, they're told by their command staff, they will do everything in their power to take it by a 21, which means by a phone call versus actual response to calls for service. We, as our police department, respond to all calls for service. The only time we won't is if it's 3 days old and someone was in your car and you call in, or you have the option to report online if you choose not to come in. And you do have the opportunity to call in for a report, but if you are at your home and you wake up in the morning and someone's gone through your car, we will respond. And so that's one thing we encourage, and we're very proactive. And there's been the perception that we're not around. There is 40,000 people in the city of Issaquah. I have minimum staff on a squad at any one time. Minimum is 3 cops. So there will be 3 cops in the whole city. So that's minimum. When our at full capacity, there's 6 on a squad plus a traffic unit. And so we're building to get there, and we're almost to 5 on each squad. So we're getting closer back to where we want to be. But understanding when we're responding to certain calls for service, we have to prioritize. We still continue to do patrol checks and such, but me going to these meetings, being accessible, answering questions, you may not always like the answer, but I will give you an answer and explain and understand. There's been questions about legislation and how that's affected in the last year, us being police, being able to do our jobs. I'm very encouraging and supportive of our staff to do their work, to go out and do police work. Now, those that get tickets, whether it be parking or speeding or otherwise, may not be happy about that, but then they know at least I know, okay, we're doing our jobs. I don't encourage them to go get complaints. What we do is that we still are responding and making sure we are responding, but within certain legislation has limited some things. If someone steals your car, for example, and we find your car and someone's in it, I have to ask the person that's in it permission to search your car. That's, yes. And so these are things that a lot of people don't understand. And so me actually even putting that person in jail, incarcerating them, is minimal and not always easy. And so I can identify them. They can say, oh, I didn't know it was stolen. And I have to be able to prove that they had knowledge.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they don't get incarcerated, then I can still get your car back. But so there's limitations. We can't pursue for anything unless it's a majorly violent crime or an escape. And so that's some of the stuff you're hearing as far as the legislation. I think some changes were made and the knowledge is a big piece. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm happy to answer questions about that and I can always get into that a lot more in depth, and I'm happy to. But I prefer to open up to questions, and that might be an easier direction to go. And I think there's someone that has a question online.
Yes, I think that's Lucretia.
Lucretia, good evening. Welcome back. I see that you're able to rejoin the meeting. We see your hand raised. Do you have a question, or is this from the previous time? I unmuted you and you should be able to speak.
Yes, I believe that's from the previous time. I did not have a question.
Okay, thank you for checking in.
I was gonna say, I'm sure we all have questions. Repeat, please.
So thanks for the overview you just gave us, Chief. I guess my question is with regards to equity, what keeps you up at night, or what are some of your primary concerns?
The biggest thing is that in all decisions that are made, for example, we have someone that I'm hiring new and they are returning from being here before. And one of the questions they asked was, well, can I get longevity from when I was here before? And I expressed the same question. I explained to that person, this is a more global question. So every time, even at that very moment in an interview, I have to explain to them, I can ask the question, but understand that this is a global question, meaning I have to think of everybody in the city. Because what if someone else that's employed by our city, that's been gone for a period of time, decides to come back? What's that ripple effect, and how will that affect everybody that chose to come back to the city? Not just the police department, not just my patrol division, all the way down. And so every decision that we make has to be looked at in that way to be fair for all the responses. And so I terminated someone in the last 2 days. The reason when I make those decisions, a complaint was made about them. I have to look at all the allegations. We do an investigation, and I have to look at the bigger picture. Is the actions of one and their lack of trust that may be brought on to our department and all of our staff of more than 70. I have to see what that's going to be like down the road and what that's going to be looked upon. And my actions and how I respond to that are a big deal. And I have to base it on the information I have in front of me and then what the bigger picture is. And so what happens if those same allegations or actions came upon somebody else? And how would I respond differently? If this person's on probation, the other person's not on probation. Okay, what would that be like differently? So it's just making sure that it's not thinking about one person or situation. It's not always emotional. It's more about the broader picture of the whole and the community, making sure that it's a decision that's going to be made across the board. And so I hope that answers your question, but it's a bigger picture than just each situational, or because it's how all of it's affected to the whole community, and how we act within our agency is going to be seen out in the public. And my officers, our officers at the police department and within our city know that they know me and they trust that if someone said, oh, she did it because, in fact, this has already been done, that, oh, someone has it out to get me, or she has it out to get me, there's probably not even one person on my staff would go, that's not how she works. And so that's big, because my reputation and how I respond, that matters. And not just to me, but to another law enforcement agency, because if they have knowledge, they're gonna know that. Businesses in our city, like the person that made the complaint works for a large business in our city. Our trust within them is gonna make a difference in how that's responded to. And so it's huge in acting the same, no matter what the circumstance, based on the information that's brought before me. And so it's just bigger picture than just one incident, one isolated, whether it be a person, situation, whatever that might be.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Question. But three questions, but I'll parse
Is
them.
there a limit?
One
Just
is two equipment related.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on body worn cameras? And the reason this is kind of a two-part question. So from my experience in the military, it was always, we could never turn off our cameras. We're going to an op. We could never turn them off. But so your thoughts, we'd love to hear your thoughts on body worn cameras, and then officers having the access to turn on and off their cameras. When I was in the Army, we could not turn our cameras off, period. We'd get an Article 15, which is a form of military discipline, for turning off our cameras. So what are your thoughts on that?
First of all, I've been dying to get cameras. I've had presentations and we've been trying, and we actually budgeted to be in the first quarter one of 2024, because we did a double budget. And so the city's very supportive of that. It's just a very expensive thing. And that was one part. But then, cost is relative, right? Is it like, what is, making sure our officers, it's not just for the officers' protection, it's for the citizens' protection. Right, correct. And so I'm all for them in a heartbeat, because our officers, there's allegations against officers, there are allegations, the follow through and recollection of the officers versus their side as well. Both of them you want to know by the camera. Regarding the persons first, turning them off. Majority of the policies for law enforcement is that they don't shut them off unless they're walking into a restroom, like to go to the bathroom, or unless they're returning home. They're supposed to be on at all times, or if they're going to go sit at their desk, as long as there's not a pattern of them shutting it off for too long, or if they respond to the call, they knew the minute they're even dispatched to a call, they would turn it back on to exit and go out to the call. And it would be on during the drive and everything else. So if you're wearing them, and you should have them on, and they shouldn't be doing anything that the camera shouldn't be on, but they should be able to also walk into a closed office, turn it off, and vent about how terrible their chief is if they choose to vent a little bit amongst each other, and it not be on camera, right? And correct, there's got to be some at some point, but as far as if they're on patrol, even while they're driving out, there's going to be a certain circumstance where even when they write the report, it should be that they're not allowed to use some of the camera for specifically a major incident. A lot of the other agencies, if not all the agencies, have protocol in there to where if you're involved in a major incident, you are not allowed to look at the camera or what the footage is until after you've given your recollection of the report. And that's because in a major incident like that, you can get tunnel vision, and if you see that, you're going to say, oh no, this is what I saw, or that's what I saw, or I thought they were turned that way. So we want the recollection, so when you get that vision, that's what it is in advance, then do your report. Now, if it's another case like a DUI or something that's different, that's helping you with your report on what you did see, you can still take notes, and it's making sure it's similar to what actually took place, because that's going to be submissible in court. But in a major incident, hypothetically, and hopefully never in our city, a shooting or something, that we want the recollection of actually what took place. And then you can watch the video and do an amendment to say, in watching the video, this is what I saw. So we're still getting full of what it was, but there's that separation going, this is what I remembered, and then after watching the video, I noticed that this X, Y, and Z happened.
Okay, that's good. All right, for my second question, another equipment related question, if I'm permitted. Good, okay, all right. I had I don't want to call it a run-in, but I've had, credit to your officers, I've actually had situations where I have to call the police, or police stop me for unknown reasons. But anyway, so I just won't say why, but credit to your officers, Paul. They're fantastic. So I was talking with this one officer who actually came out, and I actually had to call my dad about it because I was so incredulous about the professionalism of one of your officers. But anyway, in that situation, there was someone on my patio and they left a bunch of trash, some homeless person that just left a bunch of stuff. So I called the, non-emergency line, like, hey, I think, this person might have stolen some of my patio equipment. One of your officers came out and we had like an hour-long conversation, just chatting, just, two guys like to work out, just chatting about stuff. And we were talking about the fact that from when I grew up with my father as a police officer, I was used to helping him train on non-lethal equipment. And every officer in the LAPD had it. When I joined the military and the things I did, we had non-lethal and lethal equipment. But he told me in Issaquah, every officer does not have non-lethal equipment. Like you have your sidearm. That's pretty much it. He said every officer, at least this would have been 2019, he said every officer doesn't have either a taser and or a baton or something else. It's pretty much just your lethal weapon, and that's it.
That's untrue.
That's untrue. Okay, so maybe that was true back then. But
No, I've been here over 5 years, since 2017. Everybody's issued a taser. We even have the advanced tasers. Everybody's issued a mask.
Okay.
Everybody has OC.
Mhm.
They're all issued all of these, and they're required to carry them on their belt.
Okay. That's
So-
interesting why you would say that.
Yeah, so completely untrue. We have I can give you a list of all the
No, I
issued.
believe you.
No, I know, I'm just saying, we have a list of issued equipment that you get issued in a minute there, and everybody, we even have less lethal shotguns in every single one of our patrol cars on top of that, yes.
Nice.
Which actually shoots little koosh balls.
Mm-hmm.
They're mini koosh balls. So if you were to see it, you're like, oh, a kid's toy, but it stings and it can leave a welt. But the point is, but it comes out of a shotgun that's painted bright orange. But no, every single officer has access, and on their belt it is issued to them. I have a taser and less lethal and an ASP and everything. So that's completely inaccurate. So I'm not sure where maybe the misconception
Okay,
was.
that's good.
And I did the training a few months ago. Our human services staff for homeless outreach staff, we did the training for taser and pepper spray and such.
Nice.
So we have Monica to protect us.
If she had the
But I was trained.
we trained her, we didn't issue it to her.
Okay, so for my last question, now I forgot it. Oh my gosh. What was my? Sorry.
I have a
Kelly.
question.
Yeah, please.
Yes, please, Kelly.
It sounds like you're collecting data on who is being put in jail. Are you collecting data on race, sex, sexual orientation, on who's being stopped, who's being arrested, who's being put in jail, et cetera? And do you have a data dashboard for that?
The dashboard's online right now as far as criminal activity. Regarding actual arrests, we're putting together a biannual report, and then we're also putting together an annual report with that information. Included in that report, I don't think the identifier, like what people are identifying as, I don't believe that's something we track. As far as incarceration, we document male or female, and that's all relative because we can't house people in certain circumstances based on if they're in the middle of something. I can't put someone that has male parts in a female dorm, even though I identify as female, because for obvious reasons. And so we do have isolation, segregated cells if we absolutely need to, individuals, but a lot of people don't like to be by themselves either. So there's a way they categorize, and there's a lot of questions to be asked and such. So that I don't believe is on the list as far as identifying. It's more of, if they say they're a female and they are accordingly, whether that the circumstance and we put them in a holding cell, then we put them as female. So there's far and few between those as far as that issue that we have though. As far as the rest of the data, we have how many arrests that are in our jail based on all the different agencies, because we have contracts with 6 agencies as well as our own. So we have all that data. It goes into the system, their race, their name, their age, all of that. So yes, that is data that we do have, and we can gather, and we'll hopefully get to that report and we'll allow that to be presented on the September 8th council meeting. That's, you know, it's accessible. So it's something that once we get information, we're welcome to, you know, I can get that to Monica and get it to you guys and give you, and that would be from like January to June, and then the other one would be later on. So as far as traffic stops, that's not something that's specific right now, but it is something that we can put together, especially after body cams, because we can go back later and get that data. Whereas right now, that's something, let's say I do a traffic stop on Tony, and I give you, let's say, because typically before I pull somebody over, I know if I'm gonna give them a ticket or not. So let's say his plates are expired less than 30 days. I might pull him over, have a conversation, make sure his license is valid, make sure he's got his insurance. I'll give him a warning because it's less than 30 days, say get that together, or I'll say, hey, I've got 365 days to cite you for this infraction. So by the end of the month, I need you to show me proof that you got it taken care of. Great. And then if you don't, I will issue a ticket through the court and you'll get it in the mail. So I have that option as well. But I know if you're expired over 30 days, you're probably getting a ticket before I ever get up to the car. But if I give you that warning, it doesn't mean I've documented it. Maybe I'm just giving you a warning because you were going too fast or your headlight's out and you've got all the rest, everything is perfect. Hey, get your headlight fixed. Discretion of giving you a warning, a written warning, get it fixed, same thing. You know, there's fix-it stickers, all those things. But if I just literally say, hey, checking for drunks, just get it, get it taken care of. I'm not going to document it, your race. I'm not going to, your age. I'm not going to document all that in information right now. That's not something currently not that we can't, it's just not something we've done in the past at this point. We haven't had a big discrepancy or complaints that, that's been an issue for us. People want us to stop more traffic. So it's been quite the reverse because of our staffing at this point, but it's not something that's impossible to track, if that makes sense too.
Yeah, and the only concern would be the discretionary and race is problematic. It just is. I mean, I have a neighbor who, her son made a fraudulent call and she ended up arrested and spent a night in the Issaquah jail and went to court for something that was fraudulent. She was Black. Me, my neighbors, everyone who showed up in court for her, all believe it was because she was Black. And it was in Issaquah. So I know you guys work really hard and I know we're all moving fast and trying to understand this, but it is really important to document race. It is.
We document race on everybody that's charged with a crime. I'm talking about who's given a warning on a traffic stop. I'm not talking about someone who was arrested or charges were brought against them and they were brought to court.
The word problematic, and I'll stop, is that race is where it is often, and I am the worst racist. I know myself. Before I even understood anything, I made assumptions about other people and I didn't know I did it. And I'm not saying that you are, and I'm not saying that anybody is, but it's highly unlikely when you have 70 people that somebody's not doing it. And we need to stop, right? We need to stop making assumptions that people of color should get the ticket and that is how it works, right? And I know that you guys aren't that you're doing the very best you can. I get that. I'm just saying we can do better, right? We can take that information. That's all it is.
We have that information on anyone that gets a ticket. And it's not saying that we can't get the rest of the information.
Yeah.
Or we can document. And the other thing too is every single one of our staff members take implicit bias, which is what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And we all get that training annually as well. So we're making sure that our staff are knowing their own implicit biases. And we do have those conversations and we do investigate any and every complaint.
Would you mind, Chief, if I ask a question about the implicit bias training and how many hours it is? I'm sure they get it at the academy level, of course, unless they're lateral.
They do. Well, even the laterals have to go to a Codance Academy of 2 weeks, and there is an implicit bias. Yep, CIT cool. And implicit bias is also included in those trainings. And that's not just for patrol, it's every staff member, whether it be corrections or otherwise. So we took it today, it was like 4 or 5. I'd have to see exactly how much annually as far as they were taken. But the original course is I've taken 2 now. One was at the academy, that was a 3-day course that they crammed into 8 hours. Amazing speaker. He's out of a college, an all-black college, all-male black college, back in the Midwest,
Wow.
actually.
It's more.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, he was an amazing speaker, did a great job. And he even said, he goes, I thought I had more bias about the police than were actually even true, and before I started giving this trainings and riding along with law enforcement. So yeah, we took a great class by him. We just took one more recently with another lady in the community. It was a 4-hour class in the afternoon. And so, yes, we're all required. Some of it's virtual, some of it's in person, but we have an annual class that we're required to take on that for sure. So, yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Luana, did you have a question?
Oh, there was a comment you made earlier that I just didn't understand, because you said if a person just was warned and didn't get a ticket, then you don't collect data. But to me, that was problematic, because in my experience in working with people who have expressed or have bias, usually they're going to let out the person who's white and not ticket them. So I think I was struggling with that notion, because then we're not collecting data on how many people were released based on their ethnicity and color of their skin. And that was data that's really lacking to me, because then we're only getting how many people who are arrested or given a ticket. So I just couldn't understand that data, because to me, to show that there was no bias involved, I need to know everyone who was stopped, and also everyone who was stopped, what percentage of them were given tickets, what percentages were not, and then compare of the ones who were given ticket, what was their race color, or the color of their skin, versus those who were not, what was the color of their skin. So I was struggling a little bit with what you had said, so I just wanted to clarify, because you said that's something maybe y'all could collect data on, and I'm really hoping to see that you actually collect data on that point, because I think that would, especially for someone like me who's lived in Issaquah for 20 years, and I've had people, tell me many stories about being pulled over, and they felt that they were targeted because they were black, and Issaquah has very few black people. So it's, you hear certain stories when you have friends who are black and brown more often. And so I would love to see that data personally, just to ease my worry and, concern in my community, because then I can say, hey, the police department has data. Every person they have pulled over, they've told us, of this percentage, these people get their ticket and or not. And these people, so I have that clear data, because right now I don't have the full data, because I always hear, oh yeah, but my friend got pulled over and he was white and he was just let off for, because with a warning. So I think that's where that comes in. So I think that's my concern in hearing that we don't collect data for, and I know 100% super cumbersome. So hopefully when the body cams come into play, I don't know how we would go about collecting that kind of data, but that's something I really hope to see.
Well, also to clarify, we don't specifically have a chart to say so-and-so was this race, this is who I stopped, whatever, but we run every single person's name that we do a traffic stop on. So I have documentation by their driver's license, and whatever they identify on the driver's license is, for everybody that we run, which is all in our computer system. So yeah, we could probably run every single person, because if I make contact, I'm gonna not go up there and just say, oh, so I see what color you are, I'm gonna give a ticket. That's why I said, when I go and I stop you, I challenge you to see in the back of a car when you're pulled up behind them, or someone's coming at you that's 4 car widths away, can you tell what race they are? 9 times out of 10, you can't. So the fact that you think the officers can all of a sudden, it's not really an option. And with the tinted windows and everything else, and then to think that it's that simple, it's really not. And that's why I always gave the example too. I know before I go up to the car, based on when the plates are expired or not, whether I'm gonna give a ticket. Now, some things could happen if you're bawling your eyes out and you're coming from a funeral and, something you're driving, a little slower. I'm just, okay, you can pull over, you're safe, is there anything I can do for you? Then that might change my mind as far as a ticket goes. But typically, and we train our officers to make those decisions a little bit more in advance. Yes, we can gather that data, because like I said, even though if I give a warning, I'm not saying, okay, I need you to write a report and there's a place where we file this. but we do get the name and address or driver's license specifically and run their name to make sure if the person I'm contacting has a warrant for their arrest, no matter their race. And I can also tell you the population of our jail even right now is more white than there is any other nationality or race. And so those are numbers that definitely can be gotten. And it's not that we don't, we just haven't, because we, like you're saying, all these people got, oh, well, this person got a warning and this person didn't. There's a lot of relative questions that I would have too. Was it for the exact same thing? Was one speeding and not speeding? Was one going certain mile an hour over versus the other? Maybe that officer's rule of thumb is as long as they're not going 10 over and I pull them over, I'm not getting a ticket, versus if they're going 6 over. If they're going over the speed limit in a school zone versus not. I mean, there's a lot more questions too that could go into that circumstance, that may be more than just the race of somebody. So we had a congressman that went and rode with my one of my sergeants, and he asked some very pointed questions. He's like, what do you see when you see me sitting here and you've known me for 20 minutes, been riding in a car with me? What do you see? And he's a white male, beard, shaved head. He goes, you're a cop's cop and you're, whatever. He goes, yeah, do you know that my daughter's Chinese? My sister's mixed? She's like, I would have no idea. He goes, that's right, you have no idea. I mean, so there's perceptions also and bias about police when the reality is exactly the same. And so we're very careful in our training. We're very careful but we do all know we have implicit biases, but we do a lot to make sure, as far as that equity question and making sure that we have those conversations. We have sergeants and supervisors. If we see that there's a pattern of anything to where, well, how come you didn't arrest that shoplifter and you arrested this shoplifter? Yeah. So there's a lot of those things that take place. But yes, on traffic stops, we still get identification. So if I really wanted to run the names of every single person and officer that has ran, I can do that on the computer, and through our dispatch, and say that officer connected to any pick they've ever run, what's the correlation? And I can do that with everybody in our department. And I can see those numbers from our tech guys and find out how easy that would be, and see if I can get you some of those numbers based on, I wouldn't give officers names or whatever, but you would be able to see a correlation to what that looks like. So
would you be able to?
Tony, I'm gonna have to cut you short.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, Chief Swan, we really appreciate you coming out.
Sure.
I'm hoping we can get you back in to answer more questions. This is a very engaging conversation, so we really appreciate you for doing that. I want to just ask you, I know you have to go, but can you just plug your socials for us, like the police department socials, so that we can keep everyone connected and get some access to some of those reports?
Sure. Well, and the other thing is you can always email me. It's Paula S. at cityof-issaquah.gov. And it's not city, it's just issaquah.gov, by the way. So you're always able to access that. We have a Twitter account. We've got an Instagram account. We just have now a Facebook account. And so those are all connected to the city page as well as in the city's social media. And you can get us directly through there. But yeah, always willing to answer any questions. If there's something that's come up from our conversation today, you want a more in-depth questions or something very specific, I may not be able to get it in a split second or in a day, but I'd be happy to, research that and get specific information that people are looking for. Very happy to research that. And we also have like 3 or 4 Spanish-speaking officers now. We have one that's native from Brazil, speaks Portuguese. He's in the background to get here soon. And several other languages. So yeah, it's really, that's why I'm excited about the diversity of both in the jail and the rest of our staff. So, but yeah, feel free to reach out and ask questions that intrigue your mind for the board, or just personally. Feel free to reach out and we can get some of those numbers, and then once you get those, you can share them with the board. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. Alrighty, thank you so much, Chief Swan.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Oh, and thanks. It was on the panel when I got hired.
Alrighty. Okay, so we are running a little time. I'm sorry.
Lucrecia has her hand up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Lucrecia, did you have a comment or a question?
give me a moment, Tracy, I'm gonna mute you. As soon as I change here. It's, Lucrecia, you are unmuted now.
Yes, I had a question for the officer, but is she still available, or should I?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I cut it short, but we did get her email. So, can we
thank you.
share the questions later?
We'll follow up with the email for everyone. I put it in the chat also, but yeah.
Yes, and I encourage everyone who has additional questions to share them with Monica, myself, or if you got the email or you need the email, that we can definitely speak with Chief Swan again, and maybe we can invite her back and have her talk to us a little bit more.
Yes, when we talk about equity and work that city governments do, I feel like it's a lifelong work, right?
For all of
We cannot say for all of us.
For all of us,
We
in
have
every
not
direction.
arrived, we are just at the very beginning, so I'm sure again, these are just big opportunities for you as a board to put a face with a name, to get to know, get an initial feel for what the different departments in the city are doing, because I think by hearing those, then that gives you a better understanding of perhaps what are those gaps at the city, and that will help us as a board perhaps create those work plan items, right? Some recommendations, yes.
Alrighty, well, next on our agenda, and I'm sorry, Kelly, we actually did end up going a little bit into your presentation time. No, I'm sorry, I skipped over. Just kidding, we're doing the board development recap. So, Monica, do you think we're gonna have enough time for that?
Yeah, so I think this is, yes, we scheduled about an hour for this agenda item. Board members, we are about 10 minutes behind right now, but we are gonna try to pick up speed a little bit here. I had just some great individual conversations over the last couple of weeks with most of you, so thank you so much for some time. And I thought that perhaps for most of you, this is not necessarily new information, but I thought that, we've been working now for about 6-7 months. The first time you had this information, it was at your very first meeting. Everything was very new. And after that, I think now that you had a chance to really learn a little bit more about the city, now also be in person, I thought that it might be good to have a recap and a reset, start a little bit from the beginning, because I'm hoping as we discuss and really put a framework around the work that we can do, that's going to help us with the work that we still need to do for the remainder of the year. I know that we shared that we are working on a needs assessment. I want to share some information. I had a chance to meet with our city's consultant, and we are going to move full speed ahead starting next month with our work. We're going to get lots of support from the equity consultant. So I just wanted to kind of reset and move from there. And my hope is that by the end of the meeting, if there are any questions left, we can take care of those questions, and then we can really start planning for our work for 2023. Does that sound like good tonight? So that's why I have 6 items. I'm hoping to dive a little bit deeper and really have great conversation, questions and answers. Wanted to just start with that broad overview of where does equity fit in the city of Issaquah, or what do we have in the Issaquah, the citywide strategic plan, then moving to talking about the equity board and the role and how the city was formed and what we have currently in the city code, talk about board rules and regulations, how do we develop a work plan for boards and commissions, what are the roles of the equity members, and then the equity board, kind of like that distinction between when you represent and you are part of the board and when you are just an individual member. And then again, just go over the year-to-date accomplishments and upcoming meetings. And I'm also happy to say that since our city clerk is with us tonight, I might just call her in as she has great knowledge, and she may give us additional information if I'm not so sure about. So what you see on the screen and also in your agenda packet, there's a link to the citywide strategic plan if you would like to, and if you have time to dive deeper into the strategic plan. So this link here, it's actually a link to it. You're going to see the entire page. I'm not gonna open it right now, so we don't spend much time on it, but you also see updates that the city has been doing. And what you see in this circle is they are the 6 areas, wide areas of the strategic plan, and within each of those, you're gonna see specific goals for the city. And where equity fits in the citywide strategic plan, as you may see, it's one of the guiding principles. So you see at the top the vision, mission, and then here on the side, the 6 guiding principles. So equity is one of them, and it was noted in the strategic plan as ensuring that Issaquah services and outstanding quality of life are accessible to everyone. So as a reminder, the citywide strategic plan was first created in 2018 and adopted in 2019. And since then, there have been I believe almost annual updates. I know we had an update last year to the strategic plan. So definitely this is pre-COVID. And also specifically, you will see under the social and economic vitality as the city developed more work and started increasing a little bit the muscle, there's gonna be an equity team called out and an equity board, and now we are moving to equity assessment. I'm not sure that the equity assessment is called out there quite yet. So just a few words on where equity is called out broadly at the city. And so when we talk about operationalizing equity within the city over the last couple of years, in particular, we divided equity into 2 components. We have an internal aspect and the community facing. The internal aspect, again, and the decision was because from experience in prior years, it was determined that having just one person do both or one division do both internal and community facing is just too big of a project. Even as we continue to learn, we see already that that already we need additional staffing resources dedicated to this. So the internal equity initiatives were assigned to the human resources department, so they are the lead department on that. They also coordinate a meeting with an internal equity team that we have. We have currently a team of about 16 members who represent different departments and meet on a monthly or sometimes twice a month basis to discuss any internal equity needs. And then we also 2 years ago hired an equity consultant, who you met, Shannon Kelly Ray. And as Shannon mentioned yesterday, she's going to be our best friend for the next several months, as probably you're going to see her almost on a monthly basis as she's diving, especially also, as she mentioned, full speed ahead on completing the equity needs assessment. And she's leading both the internal, and then she's going to work with us for the external community facing for that. And so the community facing equity initiatives were assigned to us, the Human Services Division. When they were first assigned, they were assigned to us. I used the royal us because it was just myself at that time. Since then, we now have a Human Services Division. So we are the community facing equity initiatives lead, staff lead. You have seen the last few years, mostly our work was in organizing community conversations, cultural events, and then we were a part of creating the equity board. And so we are also participating in any other regional work that's being done equity-wise, learning what other jurisdictions are doing and whatnot. So that's a brief overview. I'm gonna stop a little bit because I want to, before we move into the role of the equity board, what are your thoughts about this? Questions, comments? What do you think about this approach? Or kind of where equity is situated within the city? Oh, I think, how do I do this? I think, Lucrecia, you have a question, unless I can't remember if I lowered your hand or if you have a question. And as I'm navigating through this stuff, I think I can't present and see.
I've unmuted her, Lucrecia.
Okay, Lucrecia, you're unmuted.
My hand was raised from before. I think you didn't bring it down.
Poor Lucrecia.
Sorry, Lucrecia.
Sorry.
Anyone else online who might have questions before we go in the room? Please feel free to raise your virtual hand. No? I don't see anyone, or send us a chat. Thank you, Tisha, for monitoring that. Great. Comment,
Yes,
question?
yeah, I'm fascinated by this assessment that Shannon Kelly Ray did. Unfortunately, I think I missed that meeting when she was there. So can you be a little more specific about the due date for that?
So she's just starting. She was with us before when she worked with you as the board. You met her when you worked on the framework, but she wasn't here yet. I just had personally a meeting with her in prepping for the upcoming months. And so she did some prep work. She has, I have some surveys that I'm gonna share with you that she put together. So in the upcoming months, you didn't miss anything.
Okay,
Yes.
and so now this connects to, there's a lot of data, because you were very keen on data. She's worked with, she's gotten that data through X means, and she's going to develop into actions that we can actually take.
She's gonna work with us on that, yes. So she is still in the gathering data information. She created a survey that's gonna go out to all city employees. She's gonna meet with senior leadership. She's gonna have focus groups within the city and in the community. So yes, so she is in that phase.
Great.
As all of you have been in the gathering data, getting to know what's going on within the city, she's been doing that as well, but she's gonna come and share with us the work that she's done so far. But yes, we are just at that time still of gathering data.
Okay.
Will we be able to attend the community conversations and also either participate or listen?
Yes, always. So anytime, yes, we had several community conversations before the equity board was created. We didn't have any specific community conversations this year other than the events that you are all part of. But absolutely, you as board members, you always have the ability to be part of the community conversations. Typically, we would ask you, if we don't remember, the only difference is with the quorum. So we would ask to have a few representatives, like maximum 4 members at a community conversation. If there's a desire from the entire board, we can, depending on what it is, we can work on promoting that as a special equity board meeting, so all of you can attend. But yes, absolutely, and that would be great. The more you can participate in those community conversations, the better you will be informed, right? Great question.
So my question is, I'm looking at the community facing and knowing that human services is the lead for it, to what degree has that either been a benefit or a limitation?
I'm so glad you brought it up, because we brought it up also recently, and not just recently, but and I think that's exactly where the city with the city's perspective is. We are still new to this. It made more sense to have it in human services because we work with those folks who are the most impacted by inequities over the years, and so that was the initial decision. But it doesn't have to be a final decision. I know that there are other jurisdictions who have equity initiatives or equity in the mayor's office or in the city manager's office. So it's not necessarily right or wrong. This is where we were like, let's start here and see where it goes. In terms of, there are pros and cons. Like I said, the pro is the fact that we are just so close, always working with the communities. We work closely with those who are homeless. We work with those who are low income. We have close relationships with all of our nonprofits and all of that. So from that perspective, great pros. Cons are sometimes staff capacity. We have so much work to do that it's easy to say, oh, if we have time, we'll do another event, but we don't always have time, right? So capacity, being a smaller jurisdiction, smaller city, we have staff who have multiple roles, whereas if you're in a larger jurisdiction, larger city, you might have multiple staff doing smaller things. So I think that's the same with larger organizations versus smaller. So that is an opportunity, again, like for the board at some point to make recommendations if, that's a desire. Yeah. Great questions. Any other questions about what we discussed so far? Is this helpful so far?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. To kind of like better understand where we are and get us grounded in that. Okay, so if I don't see any other questions, I see Helen, you turned your camera on. Do you have a question? No? Nice to see you. No. And yes, board members would be great if possible to also see on the screen. We can see on the big screen. I don't know how, I hope the quality of the visual and audio is good for you all. You can hear us and see us well. That's great. We have a good fancy owl here. That's very, very, very helpful. Okay, I'm gonna move us along. I'm good at getting us sidetracked. Okay, so the next thing, I was hoping that we can dive a little bit deeper, and here I will use the link because I would love to go into our city code and really look a little bit at what was included when the board was created. The one that I called on the screen is really the objective, and that is to support and cultivate the voices of the diverse communities in Issaquah by advising the mayor, city council, other city departments on city plans, policies, regulation, programs related to equity initiatives. It's very, very broad. It is a lot and can feel overwhelming. And I can promise you this is still much, much narrowed from what was the initial, these are all recommendations. This was a community-led effort. These were all recommendations from the community, and this is what ended up in the code. So now I'm gonna just open the code, and also for those of you who are interested, by now I would hope that you are familiar with the equity board webpage that we have. So you find it on the board. There is a link to the code, and I wonder if I'm gonna. There we are. Okay, so. So in terms of, it starts, the code talks about the objective, and we just covered that.
You can't see it.
Oh.
I think you just need to try sharing the application.
Thank you. I thought it was there for a moment, but maybe it was just for a moment. Let me share, and I need to share my screen, I believe, so then you can see whatever I see on my screen. Is that right? There we go. Thank you so much. Okay, so the first part of the city code is the objective, which you just covered. And next, there's a quite a good description of the membership of the board. And that talks about what are the qualifications. And so we always looked for, not always, we haven't been here for too long, but we looked for members who have lived experience or professional experience or both. Community members with interest in diversity, equity, inclusion. We also, the community at that time felt strongly about making sure that members of diverse racial, ethnic, cultural backgrounds are included, and then we added the other descriptions of age, disability, gender, sexual orientation. But what the community felt really strong about was that a majority of members on the equity board will be representatives of the Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So that is included in the code, and that is how it is and how it will be. Then the next are really technicalities about the terms. This is pretty typical for boards and commissions. We just had a staggered term to make sure that, board members, like, terms expire at different times and dates. Don't feel like I need to go in detail about that. Again, just some technicalities about alternate members and how many up to alternate members and when alternate members can serve into regular positions. I'm gonna pause here just to note that in case there's a clarity, we always encourage on boards and commissions that alternate members really are part of they are no less than the regular members, right? If it comes to voting on a major issue, that's when, if we have quorum of the regular members, alternate members do not necessarily vote. However, we always, as staff, again, as alternate members' voices are just as important as the other ones. We hope that by the time a board goes into voting, that you heard enough the voices of those alternate members that, that those are elevated as well. So just wanted to make that comment that, especially for a board that is an equity related, I want to make sure that we are all inclusive as much as we can, right? appointments, those are made by mayor and they are confirmed by city council. You all have been part of the interview process. The mayor was part of the interview process for all of you at the beginning. Moving forward, as we go through our annual membership for recruitment, typically staff and the chair and vice chair are going through the interview process. Then we make those recommendations to the mayor and then mayor confirms them with city council. So typically that's how the process goes. Again, I'm not gonna go into detail of removal and vacancies. I feel like they're just common sense places, but please stop me if you have any questions about those. Meeting rules, those are created by the board. We are gonna go in details on that, so I'm not gonna go there. That you will have staff support assigned. Here I want to talk a little bit about duties and responsibilities. You're gonna see, again, it can feel a little bit overwhelming because there are 7 pretty large duties and responsibilities. On one end, you provide feedback on any city policies, plans, regulations. So based on anything that the mayor, city council may assign to you, but typically, and they're just the broad ones, including not limited to the citywide strategic planning, other city equity initiatives, and then any city human services strategic plan or funding recommendations. Then second, you can make recommendations on developing new programs for the city, services, any practices, any priorities relating to equity, diversity, and inclusion. Next, it's about developing and fostering relationships with the community, with the different departments. So that's 3 and 4. So 3, it's internal with the community. 4, it's external. Oh no, 3, it's internal with the city departments. 4, external with the community. Then you're going to participate in an annual and ongoing equity training. You're going to have an annual report to mayor and city council on equity work plan, accomplishments and achievements. You will conduct a self-analysis of your work and kind of like what's working, what's not working. And then any other basically duties assigned by city council or mayor. So that was a lot. So I'm gonna stop again for any conversation, discussion on what's clear, what's not clear in terms of the board's duties, responsibilities. Again, we started with the board. It's an advisory board to the mayor, so you can make recommendations. You advise the mayor and city council, can make recommendations for policies, can make recommendations for different programs to be implemented. And also if there are any timely, short-term or long-term, you already had the experience, right? We had the cultural calendar that was assigned by the city administration as a task. You also had the equity framework that was assigned to you that where you provided input and recommendations. So you will have always short-term, one-time touch initiatives that you're going to be asked to provide input on, and you are going to have also longer-term projects that might take a couple of months or several months.
So on the our mission statement of advising the mayor and advising city council, it seems to be, of course, since we've been our happy group here, that has been more of a proactive, maybe us reaching out versus city council and mayor reaching out. So when I see certain things that occur in the Highlands where I live, and I think about, maybe I should go to a city council meeting and talk about these things. What I kind of expect to see is that, okay, the city's gonna implement something like free Wi-Fi for the Highlands. Like, most of us in the Highlands don't need free Wi-Fi, but people down in the, maybe in the lowlands and the lower income areas of Issaquah, they need free Wi-Fi. And so what I would expect to see is city council and mayor that, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing, like the whole street light or painting the street lamps. Like, the Highlands doesn't need that. Like, other areas of Issaquah need that improvement. So what I expect to see is not what we're actually seeing. And maybe I feel that way. I'm not sure if the rest of the board feels that way. But I'm wondering, is there a process put in place to say, hey, we're going to do these things. We want to implement these things. Let's talk to equity staff by, from the city of Issaquah, but when are we, as a collective group, gonna get involved in that decision-making process to run it by our lens? Is it after we've built our foundation, which I don't feel that we've totally made the foundation yet, but what are your thoughts?
So then, let me make sure that I understand, because you say that it's been proactive from the board to the council. Like, for example, when it was assigned by the council for the equity board to weigh in on the equity toolkit.
That's a good example.
That's a good
Something like
example,
that, that's a
right?
great example.
So that's like, it's something like that you would like to see more.
Yeah,
right?
let's see more,
Exactly.
right, because like I
Yes.
said, like in my example about what's going on in the Highlands now, it would have been nice if someone at the city made that decision. But from an equity lens, no offense, I live in the Highlands, no offense, but the Highlands doesn't need free Wi-Fi, we don't.
Right.
And so that's what I kind of expected to see, some of those decision-making processes. We're gonna do this in the city, so, hey, let's run this by the equity board and see if, what does the equity board think about this?
Right. That's great. And the typical process that should be followed, and you started right after the budget process was adopted last year, but typically as the city-wide work plan is being created during the budget process, and that's gonna start now in September, it's gonna end in November. So in an ideal situation, at the end of the budget process, we have now a citywide work plan for 2023. At that time, and I think that's where there's an opportunity for us to inform, somebody should look at all the items that the city is doing, and we have that opportunity too, to review that and say, okay, what's on the agenda for next year for the entire city? And which ones are the agenda items where perhaps we, as an equity board, can help weigh in and inform, right? Because realistically, we are not gonna be able to do everything, but we can look at the citywide work plan and say, maybe these are the items where we could weigh in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, because I think that's also what the equity framework is designed to do. So, when things are being proposed, they do that analysis to determine, which communities are most impacted, can benefit the most, and there's people like posts in those communities, right? So there's not, I could see that being a natural part of the decision-making process if it's implemented and operationalized that way. But I think there could be some like bigger decisions beyond like painting a wet post that, could come to us.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that we should see. Okay, no, great. So no, yes, you're absolutely right. That's great. That's a great example, and yes, we can talk about that. And I see, Lucrecia, you have a question. Let's see how I can.
I'll unmute her.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's unmuted.
Hey, Lucrecia, you have the floor.
Thank you. So my question is for clarification, to make sure that I understood, and if I misunderstood, fine, and if I understood correctly, I'd like to question. Anyway, so the question is, you stated that when we go to have, replacements for the board, eventually when we time out our service, that it will be the chair and the vice chair along with city staff who will select the replacements. And I want to understand why that is the case, because when I served on the commission, I was neither chair nor vice chair, but I was included in the interview process when we were replacing commissioners on that commission. So can you explain to me why it's different from this?
Thank you, Lucrecia, for that question. So as you may know, Lucrecia served on the Human Services Commission as well prior to this. And so what happens, Lucrecia, so typically it's, we like to provide opportunities for the chair and vice chair to be part of the interviews, or any other members for that reason. But for example, what happened in that case, if we didn't have the chair or vice chair did not have the capacity to participate in interviews, so then we opened it and we asked the other board members. So that's what happens typically. Or also, like, especially as we wanted to provide more diversity on interview panel. Then also we invited other commissioners, and not just, a group of. So that's the reason why you served on the Human Services Commission, and that's not a reason that you cannot serve also on the Equity Board interviews. It's really depends on time, capacity, and making sure that we do have. But that's the intent always, to have a more diverse interview panel. Does that help,
Great,
Chris?
thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm. Thank you.
It was unfortunate that we lost our youth members. So I think having that perspective on this board is going to be really key to our strategy. Is there a timeline when Jacob and his placements are going to join us?
So that's a great question, and I need to check with city clerks. They're on my to-do list. I do have actually a youth member who's interested, that I just had a chance to meet them at one of our events, and they are interested in serving. I just need to ask permission to see if that's something that we can fill mid-year before the annual process starts. So our annual process typically starts in January, February, and it ends in March, April, as you know, that all terms end in April. So typically it would be next April, May, but I'm gonna ask, and I don't see any reasons why we couldn't do it mid-year, but I don't want to commit to that because I know it depends on other
And a
priorities as well.
follow-up, Lorna, did I get it right that you're engaged with the high school as well? They're in some format?
And we would just
I
need
work
to
in the
open it.
fiscal school district.
Oh, okay. So I'm sure they have similar types of work embedded in the high school with
So I actually have it on my notes when you mentioned that Jacob and Megan were leaving, to ask our equity person in our district to reach out, because we have a group of students who have an equity group.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna ask her to reach out, share the fact that we have this opening, and see if anyone's interested to reach out and wanna come.
Great.
So we just need to look into opening it mid-year, and I can advocate for the fact that it's important to have a youth member, and hopefully we can open what's the process called, the recruitment process during mid-year instead of just waiting until next year.
Great.
Sounds like that's something that the board's interested in. Great. Okay, great questions. Kelly?
So I'm probably overthinking this, I'll just say that, and it has to do with, I used to do engagement in my job, so I overthink these things. But the equity board role, as far as I can tell, and say this as clearly as I can, our role is both to advise to the city, so we are experts. It is also to go out and find out information and bring it back and give it to the city, correct? It is also to participate in a smaller role in community conversations, which don't necessarily go anywhere, they're conversations. And it's also part to be the face of the equity committee publicly, or part of the face, right? That's a lot of roles. And this one's, I could be totally wrong off base. So I'm gonna throw it out there because it's been sitting in my stomach for the last week as I was reading this. And that is, every other committee is the expert. So the planning commission is made up of experts, and they give advice to whatever it is that they're tasked with. And I'm not saying I don't want to do engagement. I actually joined because I like engagement. So I'm not saying I don't want to do it, but I'm just wondering about, this is the only group that does that and goes out and talks to people and brings it in. Therefore, we do more. And there's an equity issue.
So I would love to speak to that, and we had a little bit of conversation. So a little bit of clarification, if I may. Great, thank you so much, Kelly, and I so appreciate always your tough questions. Yes.
This small.
So all boards and commissions are volunteer boards and commissions, right? So all of that, they represent the community, right? So that's the entire goal, right? Like to have community voice that informs the city, so the city does not take decisions in a silo, right? So great. When you say, for example, the Planning Policy Commission, that they are experts, I'm not sure that anyone is expert in planning policy necessarily, right? They need to have perhaps a passion or an interest. But unless I'm wrong, Tisha, I'm looking at you, do you mind telling me they are not professional
No,
planners?
that's not what I'm implying.
Sometimes it can be just
There's
because
certain
it just,
criteria that
right.
some of them might have experience in certain areas, but not.
right, exactly. So just like us, we have criteria, we want more diversity and all of that, right? So that's one. On the other end, but you're right. So that's why, like, to some extent, all boards and commissions are the experts in the sense of you represent the community, right? The community voice. With the equity board, we can keep it that way, right? To me, the conversation is, as an equity board, and that's why it's a new board, everything's new, we are still trying to figure out how to best work. You are the experts for the communities that you represent, if you feel comfortable with that, right? But when we talk about equity, and we always talk about never taking a decision without a community on behalf of a community, then would we feel comfortable as an equity board just taking the decisions and making the recommendations as experts without really taking a good pulse of the community? And I'm going to throw the example of, let's say we have a diversity of different ethnic and racial representation here, but let's say we had a few months ago presentation on ADA, right? And someone who's in a wheelchair. If somebody comes to us to ask for our expert opinion on what do people in wheelchairs need to have at the city, do we feel comfortable as an equity board at the city making that recommendation as the expert board without talking with the community, right? So that's why I feel like, yes, our role, it's a little bit that it's our duty to build the relationship with the community, to always know what the community issues are. And so, yes, it's challenging because it's more.
It feels like they're experts. I'm just throwing this out there so we talk about it. I could be totally off base. It feels like the planning commission, I have friends who are on the planning commission. The planning commission, it's good enough that those people in the room know stuff. I get that we want to go talk to people. I understand that. But isn't it true that they should be talking to people too? And they're like the problem?
Absolutely.
Right? And so why are we, I'm trying to sort out, if we're really doing this, if the city is really doing this, how do they do it?
And so another great question, I would like to open it for others for conversation. That's exactly, and I had this conversation internally with our equity team. In an ideal world, when we feel that we are close to arriving, I'm never going to feel comfortable saying we arrived. We should not have an equity board. So just go with me and envision this down the line. I don't know when, ideally sooner than later. But we should be able to work ourselves out of being needed, right? Because if we really got to a point where everybody's gonna have that thinking and equity lens in everything that they are doing, every board and commission, they're gonna have equity so much embedded in what they do that we are not gonna be needed anymore, right? But we are not there yet, Kelly. So I think that's why we are so unique and new, and I think, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted, I wrote down expert because that word is problematic, right? It's not inclusive. It excludes like huge swaths of the population just by that word. And I think being more future thinking and equity, thinking, people with lived experience are experts of their experiences. Exactly. And like you said, they need to be the closest to co-creating solutions. And so obviously we don't represent all of those communities. And so just to even the word expert is problematic. I'll just stop there.
Thank you.
I think it's important to recognize too that equity is always evolving. Equity a few years ago doesn't look anything like it does today. And as a person who stays within the loop of DEI work, I would hope that we could get to a point to where we're not needed. But I think as things evolve, there's always going to be an opportunity for us to bring a new lens to what equity looks like. So I hope that we can at least move along with that, concurrently with that evolving, so that we can provide better information, not necessarily expert information, because to your point, there is no expert when it comes to this kind of work.
I was gonna wait until this comment, until we talked about the community engagement work. And what resonated with me with that group is the opportunity to go out there and talk to people. And we've been sitting here for 8 months and not doing that. So I thought that was gonna be the committee that would go out there. I'm ready to go talk to that Indian grocery store on Gilman, that teriyaki store up on Lakemont, and just get their feedback and things. What is going on in your world that we should hear? And we are your venue for addressing any concerns that you have. And that's data to me. I mean, just doing that interview and coming back and just sharing some of their experiences. And if that's commonplace and it's problematic, then we need to escalate. And if it's good work, then we need to share it. So I think that's why I'm ready to kind of put some action behind some of our words. So I'm hoping, I don't know if we have to wait for Shannon Kelly Ray's recommendations or if we can do that with some of the work we're doing. And we shouldn't limit it to our committee. I think that's homework that we can do ourselves, just walking around our neighborhoods and talking to that restaurant owner if they're a minority and say, how is your world going? Right? Yeah.
And any other opportunities with that? Thank you, Ray. Like you mentioned earlier, like cultural conversations that you just go, there's no action, you just sit. I believe, if I may respectfully say, I think you can learn so much from every interaction, whether that's an event, like Welcoming Week is coming up this Friday. Hope many of you can make it that, but then just getting the pulse of the community in any situation that you can, I think that's valuable information. Whether that is attending another board or commission meeting, whether that's going to a farmer's market, to a business, right? The more you're out there, the more you learn about what's needed in the community, right?
I guess when I talk about community conversations, what's the mechanism to bring that information back? Right, that's
why let's continue, because I want to
yeah.
talk about that. Right, so yes, great. And I realize I think we have about 10 minutes. Lucrecia?
I can unmute.
Yes, Maya?
Yes, tell us. You have a question or comment?
No, I think that you just forgot to take me off from the last one.
Okay.
But you know what? I do have a question, Monica, real quick. I'm pulling into Issaquah, and I need to hear if I should show up, even if it's only 30 minutes left in the meeting, or if I should just keep going with the phone.
Please feel free to stop by if you want. We are planning not to stay much longer after 8, but we are here for the next half hour.
Okay, I'll show up. I'll be there in a few. Thank you.
That would be great. Thank you. And then with that, before moving forward, I want to ask Christina if you have any questions, or Helen if you have any question online. Please raise your hand if you do. I don't see any, or put in the chat. Tisha, let us know if you see anything. Okay. Okay, so let's move forward because we have a little bit to cover, and I'm going to move a little bit faster on this plan because we already talked about the work plan development and how, so this is just a brief visual. Usually you would always start with community input, including the strategic plan elements, the city annual budget work plan that's being done, as I just mentioned earlier, and then your work plan gets developed from that city annual work plan, and then you may get additional direction from mayor and city council. This is just a visual of the timing on how the budget process goes in the work plan, and in case, I wanted to cover a little bit here. This is where it starts going to Kelly's question. So let's say we start developing a work plan based on input from mayor and city council, based on the annual citywide work plan. And mid-year or so, you have a great idea because you heard something perfect you brought up earlier this year, if you remember. Kelly, if I'm not mistaken, it was you. You said, what about a statement on the war on Ukraine? So there are two ways. You can either just communicate with staff and say, hey, I have this idea, can we add it? either to the agenda or can we discuss it at the next meeting? Or during the meeting, we always have at the end of the meeting other business and updates. So under that section, you can always bring up and say, hey, board members, I went to this business on Gilman and I heard this great idea, and I think we might have an opportunity to have a roundtable conversation or a training on perhaps customer service, because I think maybe what I'm noticing that there's, I don't know what, it's late, I don't have the most creative ideas. But that's where you can bring it up to the board and say, do we have capacity? Do we have interest as a board? Can we add it to our work plan? Can we do it now because it's timely, or can we do it later down? Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, and again, depending on capacity, depending on what we have, we may decide as a board to take that on. Now, what I want to also add here, because it's important, we now have a community engagement committee, right? So I want to talk a little bit about, you as a board may decide, okay, we have this great opportunity. I know it was a need. For example, I'm going to use this example. It came up at events. It came up in other conversations that I had in the community, where Black members of our community sometimes feel not welcomed in certain grocery stores. And we heard that more than, I personally heard it more than once, right? So that came up as a possible topic. Perhaps that can be a training, that can be an event. You as a board might say, oh, that would be a great, we heard this is a need. We as a board might not have right time now, and we don't know exactly what to do. But hey, community engagement subcommittee, we can assign this topic to you. Do you mind doing more engagement? Perhaps develop a survey, perhaps go and visit all the grocery stores or some grocery stores. Just give us more data before we move forward. Or can you just engage more with the community, find out more information, and bring it back to the board? So as a board, you can assign certain things that are more detailed to the community engagement committee that can take that on and further, and then perhaps make a recommendation, bring it back to you for further discussion. And then maybe then you say, you know what, this would be a great recommendation for the mayor and city council to be aware, and we would like to do X, Y, or Z. Maybe we want to have a policy on recommending equity training to all businesses in Issaquah. I don't know, I just said that as an example. But that's kind of like how that could go as a recommendation for policy. Or it can just stay for you as a work plan and say, how about we do part of our cultural conversation in the next 3 months? It's gonna be one with businesses. Does that help a little bit in the process? Okay. Okay, so this is where I might need a little bit Tisha's help in the roles. What are the roles if you are representing yourself or the equity board? And is that, do you mind speaking a little bit to that, Tisha?
No, I don't. I'm just gonna sit here. Yeah, so this is always a little tricky when you serve in a role in a group. So when you're talking, hi, I'm Tisha, I'm the city clerk. I've seen you all virtually. It's so nice to see you in person. So when you are out in the community and doing the work of the equity board, which what we want to reflect here is just be careful about how you are conveying yourself. So if you are engaging with the resident and you have a personal viewpoint on an issue related to the equity board, just couch it as your perspective if the board hasn't weighed in on it collectively. That's really what this is about, is just making sure that you are not representing your group in a way that they haven't made a formal recommendation on. And also it's helpful to keep that in mind as it pertains to the city. So the city has, a lot of complexity. We have lots of departments. We have our city council. We have 13 advisory boards. But we try and have a unified voice. We are all collectively working towards the big C city. And so when it comes to weighing in on and taking positions, it's important to be aware of, and that's why that checking in with Monica is important. Has the mayor already issued a statement on something? Has the city council issued a statement? Has the city, posted something? So we're just wanting you to be aware of that and making sure you're connecting with the rest of the city in certain cases before sort of, pronouncing something or especially publicly.
Okay.
So we're working together.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I
Thank you.
cover?
Yes,
Is that
I think
helpful?
so.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And welcome, Lucrecia.
Thank you, folks. It's been a long day.
So happy you're here.
Okay, so we are approaching the end of this component, so I'm happy. I want us to keep us on track. Just wanted on the screen, you have just a brief list of the accomplishments that we had so far this year. And I know that some of you, or maybe many of you, feel like, oh, I want to do more and I want to do it fast. I think I want to tell you that I think what you experience now as a board, I think it's right, I think, where you need to be. It's okay to feel, I think it feels frustrating because there's still many, many new things, and there are also many things that we need to figure out. And we don't have an experienced board that has been around for 20 years and they have all the very clear processes. We are in virgin territory. We are creating processes. We are trying to implement things in the city. So I think it's natural for things to not be figured out. We are here to figure it out. And I think if we keep on working at this, we will figure it out and we have the right people at the table and online. So I think what's coming up in the next few months for us, it's, I think as you heard, continuing and expanding, really working on the needs assessment. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we will be moving quite at a fast pace in the upcoming months. You will see Chan and Kelly Ray come at most of our meetings in the upcoming meetings, so then we can focus on the needs assessment, and that's also going to help us develop our work plan for 2023. My guess is that probably we are going to have a midterm plan, and some of the work that she's doing with the city is going to go more far advanced into next year. So then once that's completed, we are going to have a longer term plan. But so a little bit of that. Also, I would want for us to figure out an expanded way of building relationships with our communities. Having people more than our, friends from the Baha'is of Issaquah, more than just attending meetings. How can we involve more the community and be with the community, right? And then any other initiatives that are going to be proposed. I know that I had a great chance to hear from some of you. I have a running list of some of the initiatives that you have in mind. Let's look at those, prioritize, again, hear from the community and so forth. So with that, I think that concludes this portion for us tonight. Was this helpful? Do we have other things that we want to discuss, clarify, questions?
I just have a quick comment. I just want to let you all know I am so proud of you, everyone in this room and online. Because this is like, I think that many of you know that the work of equity is not, I often have to tell my group, we can't boil the ocean. We have to take our time and we have to ease into this, and that's not my choice. And I am so proud that we want to deliver on our commitment. So I just wanted to tell you that.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Monica and as well as our leader here, because it can feel very frustrating. It can feel that we're not moving forward at the rate that we would like as individuals. And I think this public recognition from the two of you is important also because whoever in the community is watching, whoever's holding us accountable, also need to be aware that what we have accomplished is enough, right? Because I do feel pressure. I don't know if you all feel pressure from our, is it fair to say, constituents, the people that, we're here to represent. I feel like there is a level of pressure, whether it's articulated or not. And so I'm just grateful to hear that we're actually moving forward at the right rate.
And this is a lot, board members, right? Like you brought up great ideas on, and I know, and we want to start having those conversations, not only on things that need to be changed in the community at the city, but also process-wise, right? And so I think there's many opportunities, and there's not necessarily a wrong starting point, right? And this is not a step-by-step process that you start at number 1 and you get to number 10. You can start in many areas and tackle it from, that's why it's such a complex issue. So, okay.
All right, so thank you, Monica, for that wonderful presentation. I feel like we got a lot, a lot of really good information. We'll move on to our community engagement with Kelly. I'm so excited to hear about this. So would you please share with us?
Well, we didn't meet last month. We are meeting next week.
Yeah.
You are our newest member. Megan is gone. So that's Monica, Ray, Shay, and myself. And we are trying to figure out what we're doing, right? That is literally it. And so I look forward to us. I'm trying to figure out ways to have that conversation creatively. So because we got to figure out what we're doing. And any direction you have, we would love to hear.
All right, and so thank you for bringing that up. I think even more so, it's also not fair for the committee to feel that pressure, like we need to figure it out. Like it also should be a board conversation, and feel free as a board. I think when the board, let's go back to the source also, because when the board initially was created, I believe the initial task was, let's create a board that's going to be in charge of organizing community events, right? And then since then, though, the community engagement committee said, well, but we can be so much more than events. And so I think this is where the time is, either the committee can have a discussion and say, okay, what's our capacity? What can we do? And let's pick something and bring it back to the board and say, board members, we discussed, and this is what we believe we can do and we can make a difference. This is our recommendation, would you support it? So that's one option that can be done. As you said, next week we are meeting. So that's one option, maybe we can discuss that. Or if not, at the next board meeting, as a board, all of you, I would like to encourage you and say, what's our task for the committee? We created a committee. How can we best utilize their expertise, their time? What can we delegate to them to begin with? And again, it doesn't have to be, they're gonna do this for the next 20 years, but perhaps, okay, we have an opportunity for the next 3 months. We would like to go and engage with the committee and find out more on certain needs, right? So let's start thinking about that. And I bet also as Shannon Kelly Ray will come and have a conversation with us, I think as she's gonna share, and I'm gonna share via email, a survey that she put together. I encourage you to look at that and also think about, okay, what can, now we have a committee on engagement, how can they help with gathering the data that we need from the community, right? So you have those options.
Yeah, we can talk about that, but I think that's probably the direction, right? It's just built in and it clearly gets back to the people who need to hear it. That's what it sounds.
Yes.
But we can talk about it more. But, if people have ideas, whatever. And we can bring it to I'm happy to do like brainstorming ideas, things with the group about it once we come up with some framework for us. First, we gotta get to know each other.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. And acknowledge this is the very first time you have an in-person meeting. Like, let's pause and acknowledge, like, you never met in person. It's not that you are, and most of the boards are.
Some of us have.
Some of you have.
In unlikely places, but yes.
That was fantastic.
That was fantastic meeting in Barcelona. Unplanned.
I guess I'm going to jump in and say that one of the things that has concerned me in terms of the committee is, what I don't want to see is the committee be something like, what would you call it? Like a multicultural events committee, right? Because we've come from that. We know that that's not necessarily what works, right? And one of the things that I shared with Monica when we met one-on-one was that there are some very difficult conversations that are taking place out in the community that are not community building. They're actually community destroying, in my opinion. And I feel like we could be that platform to have those difficult discussions, right? About bias that exists, about, in my opinion, bordering on hate speech, right? And I would like for us to consider, are we equipped for that? Do we have access to professionals who can help us have those difficult discussions, right? Because it has to be maybe a little both, right? It's great to reach out to the community and create community, but also we need to address some of the underlying issues that are also in existence as we speak.
You know, one thing, I've been thinking about, Monica, when you shared some of the strategic plan and things like that, I'm thinking, if we want to center this work on some Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and I would say probably Black and Indigenous folks more, I think having difficult conversations also involves having relationships and having, so it's not just a one-off event in the community, or maybe it's less about, interviewing someone or a focus group, but it's like establishing a table and having enough connection at a certain cadence. So, and understanding what the priorities of those communities are, what are the priorities, what are the services they need, and using those conversations and repeat engagements as a way to elevate those voices and to advise, and use that as the vehicle to advise council, departments, the mayor. That could be one approach to think about.
So, and briefly to your point, there are people asking for community. And this is something that, obviously we are in a community, but when I hear that I need to find my community in Issaquah, that normally indicates to me that there's an opportunity for us to bring more people in and extend our table a little bit more. So it is my hope that we can bridge that gap to where people can easily find the community, much like they would in the school district, where they make room for people to find where their place, not necessarily their place, but maybe where they can relate. And surprisingly enough, many of us relate on a lot of different levels and just don't know it. So I think that we have to eat the elephant one bite at a time and then move into that action quickly, because again, we cannot boil the ocean. We have to just try to move one step at a time, to put one foot in front of the other every day. All right, well, Kelly, do you have any more information about the community engagement?
No, not at this point.
All right, well, we are moving right along. And Monica, how are we doing on time?
We're good.
All
We have
righty.
a few minutes just for staff report and then.
All righty, well then, go ahead and pass the mic to you.
Thank you. So board members, just for a few minutes on staff report and some updates for you. As you might have heard me quite a few times so far, I'm gonna start with the Welcoming Week event. It is an annual event that our city staff and in collaboration with the King County Library, businesses and community groups in Issaquah have been working on. Tisha is also part of the planning group. Here's our city clerk, in addition to some other staff. So people have worked really hard. It is an event that we are proud of, and we hope that you can join. But more, what I think for the equity board, we do have a city table. If anyone's interested in connecting with people in the community, I think there would be a great opportunity to meet new folks, interact, let as many people know as possible that the board exists, and invite them to engage with us. So the event is on Friday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. right here on the lawn behind us at the community center by the stages. And some of you might have attended concerts on the green, so that's exactly what it's going to be. We're going to have food trucks, mariachi bands, several dance groups, steel pan drummers. So very excited about that. So that's one quick update. Some updates from council and mayor. Last night, as you heard Council Member DeMichelle, City Council adopted the cultural and religious calendar that you worked on several months ago. Tisha and I have been on the team working to operationalize the calendar. So as you might have seen and you heard from me, we are looking at just some of those initial things. We are very task oriented. We are looking at the calendar for the remaining of the year, and when there are community meetings and public meetings that are impacted by those holidays that we observed, and we are rescheduling. So please, I know you all heard from me. Next month's meeting, it's not going to be on our regular first Wednesday of the month. It's going to be on the first Thursday of the month. So we are meeting on October 6th instead of 5th. You will get reminders from me. If I'm getting too annoying with reminders, please let me know. But please do read my emails and get back with me if needed, because I'm trying to just send you the absolute important information. So we are operationalizing that in addition to just looking at, Tisha has been doing a lot of work with also council meetings and boards and commission meeting and updating those calendars. We are really working also internally with our IT department, and as promised, we want to use that as an educational tool for city staff. So we are going to work on that as well. And then last but not least, just keep on inviting the community. We are looking at posting the calendar on the website, and then inviting the community to update that calendar, since we think and hope it's a live document. So for that, yes. Other really quick council updates. Last night, City Council also adopted an ordinance for tenant protections. It's human services related, but it focuses on tenants and those who are renters. The ordinance requires that landlords provide 120 days notice for any residential rent increases that are over 3%. And this applies for non-subsidized tenancies. The state requirements is 60 days. So now with the ordinance, they are going to be required to provide 120 days notice. So that's that. I think that covers my updates, the main updates.
Right.
Monica,
Can I share something anecdotally really quick?
Yes,
Oh, go
please.
ahead.
just a quick question. Do we have a November date? Because I think the last time I talked to you, you weren't sure.
Yeah, so the tentative November date, but in checking with all of you, it seemed like the November date did not work. And so in one of my emails, so the date that I was proposing, thank you so much, Lorna, for bringing that up. The date that I was proposing for November was November 10th, and that was not working for quite a few of you. Another possible date could be the 17th. I just did not have a chance to check if that we are okay for room. If you have access to your calendars, to let me know if the 17th would work. Let me know. If not, I'll follow up with an email, and then just please respond if you don't mind.
I know for me, I'll be out of the country during that time.
You are, okay. So maybe I can provide a few different options for November, but at least I know we have October. I'm taking it a little bit step by step. We have October figured out. We'll figure out November as well. But yes, you're right. We don't have a date yet for November. But please look out for an email.
Oh, she said I have equity board special session on my calendar for the 17th. Did you?
For 17th, yes, I was proposing when we discussed that we should have a special session, I was proposing the 17th as a special session, but again, it's like we didn't land firmly just because we don't have yet something that works for most. So I'll try to look for some new dates and confirm room availability and get back with you.
Yeah, so what I wanted to share anecdotally was that the other day I was volunteering at the food bank, and one of the shoppers, right? One of the attendees shared with me that her rent had gone up by $400, and that they were given literally like a 1 month notice for that. And she was just like, we can't afford to move, and we can't afford the $400 a month of rent, and we don't know what we're gonna do. And that was shocking to me, because I can't begin to imagine if my mortgage went up by $400, like what we would need to do. We would have to shift stuff around, but our realities are also different, right? But yeah, I just could not believe that someone could be charge $400 within 30 days notice.
And that's actually a lower number considering, Discovery Heights has had, increases up to $700. Which is a lot to ask for anybody, because they're trying to get rents up to market rate. And most of the people that live there have been living there for, I think the longest I've heard is 8 years. So
Wow.
what you're paying from 8 years to now is still less than what market rate is currently in this area.
So yes, thank you so much for that. Definitely we hear and we heard some of that information as well. Always looking forward to hearing more information. City Council last night also assigned the Council Services, Safety and Parks Committee and city staff, our human services staff. They tasked us to continue to work on finding other mechanisms to support the community. So more to come on that. So any other information we have definitely helpful. So that concludes, I think.
All right, wonderful. Well, if no one else has a comment, we are actually ending 2 minutes early. So, do we have any questions with the people online or any comments? Alrighty.
I'm gonna just say something quick. At one of our meetings, Saba and Farah had made a comment and wanted to have questions or had questions regarding the school district's equity program, and they wanted to share some ideas with the school district. And so I've spoken to the executive director of equity, and we are trying to set up a meeting. There are a lot of people in and out of town. So Farah and Saba will be invited to talk to Elena Sivaдаsan, the executive director, and hopefully a mutual time that works for all. As we know, sometimes it's hard, but hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's exciting. Good stuff there. Alrighty, well, if we don't have any other questions, comments, or announcements, then our meeting is adjourned here at 8:04.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
This is so cool to see everyone.
I went to see my son off at
I
school.
know, it
He
almost
started school
feels
this
weird.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he attends a high school on